Amrita,
Bhakti.
why are we so sleep deprived?
Oh, I'm not sleep deprived. I'm just in a bad mood.
Okay. Well, Amrita, you're in a bad mood, and I'm just a little tired. In fact, I'm always just a little tired, right? So I think at least for the sake of this episode, we have to stop making excuses and come out and tell the truth. My name is Bhakti Shringarpure, and I'm sleep deprived. Your
My name is Amrita Ghosh, and I am sleep deprived.
There we have it out now, and hopefully that means we are going to have great sleep for the rest of our lives. I
It
doubt it.
all with this.
Yeah. But I'm not a great sleeper. I'm a light sleeper, but I don't think I'm deprived necessarily of sleep. I don't know. I do sleep, but I'm too light of a sleeper, I think. But I have slept even less the past couple of days because I know that we're having a sleep expert on our show. Ruhi Snyder will join us, and she's going to totally, I'm just worried she's going to pronounce me like dysfunctional. But I'm also excited to learn.
But the irony of it all that we're walking into an episode with a sleep expert, I certainly haven't slept well. So I guess
Why?
it's,
Why do you say that? Let's start to analyze.
I think I have not been a good sleeper in the last decade or so. It has to do with motherhood. We should talk about that. It has to do with work. It has to do with everything, the hyperconnectivity of the cell phones. So, it's a strange, but it's a very pertinent thing to talk about our sleep because it
Yeah,
affects everything else.
I know. Um, yeah, but like maybe you're just one of those, a genius, like this untapped genius, because you know how they always say, like the geniuses don't sleep. Obama, I know Obama's not a genius, but like world leader, right? Obama slept only 4 hours. He functioned on 4 hours. And then you have all our yogis and gurus, who also don't sleep, or they're just in a perpetual meditation. There is this myth that if you're a bad sleeper, you're probably doing something extraordinary with your time. Are
Well,
you?
I don't know. I mean, when you were talking about genius or world leader sleeping so less, I was thinking about Shah Rukh Khan. I think there's this whole
What?
thing about he sleeps very little, 4 or 5 hours. It's out there somewhere.
And
So
it
you're
makes him so handsome still and so popular.
some people look good with so little sleep. I don't understand it.
Yeah,
And how did we get here? Because
yeah,
I was reading the statistics are confounding. It's shocking to say
I
that
know, I know.
globally this is a crisis.
Yeah,
And, you know,
yeah. You know,
epidemic everywhere.
personally, I've never actually pondered the question of sleep
Hmm.
until I started to do my research back in the PhD days, many years ago, and I also see myself as someone who um, learned about the world after 9/11. After 9/11 happened, I was in New York, and then that's when like politics began to fall into place. I started to understand, international politics, and the thing that killed me, I remember, and made me think about sleep is the fact that sleep deprivation is an official form of torture. Like the Kubrick manual, which was, came out in the 50s, and it's like it details like ways to cause the body most pain.
Hmm.
And of course, they are talking a lot about electricity in that manual, that the CIA and then every other regime,
Hmm.
took on those tips. But sleep deprivation is a much used form of torture in prisons. We have all this spectacular amounts of information about the way children's rights are abused in Israeli prisons. We know about Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, and sleep deprivation is used again and again, up to 180 hours of deprivation from sleep. So I'm sorry to have switched like this and just suddenly gone so super depressing. But it's the first thing I realized is like the extent to which sleep deprivation is a political tool,
Hmm.
um, and while we're talking about the extreme version of it that I just did, it's just something as a society we've also become used to making excuses. Oh, it's okay, I function on very little, I'm not a bad sleeper, I'm just, I function on very little. That's one of my favorite lines. Oh, I function on very little. But am I functioning? I don't know.
I mean, there's pride associated with little sleep, right? As we just talked
Yes.
about it. But one thing is about this intensely horrifying thing about sleep deprivation used as torture. But the other side of it is, there is a global sleep day where we're celebrating or at least encouraging people to
What?
sleep. Yeah, I think March 17th is a global sleep
But
day.
is it a bank holiday? I mean, what? How are we supposed to sleep?
I think I don't know if it started this year, but certainly I remember March 17, 2023 was celebrated as Global Sleep Day,
Awesome.
where people are encouraged to sleep, prioritize our sleeps. So something is happening that it is being recognized, at
Yeah.
least that we're a sleep deprived
Yeah.
generation, or
Yeah.
maybe more than that. But I was also thinking about recently a trip to the supermarket. There's this whole
Oh.
commodification of sleep. There's these sleep pills, sleep this, sleep
Mhm.
perfume, sleep lavender, and
Yeah.
sleep pillows, sleep comfort this, comfort that. So
Yeah.
it's also,
I peddle in a lot of sleep drugs myself, actually, Amrita. You're unlucky to live in a different town, but go on.
but so I'm also interested in the whole commodification of it. Also, I mean, there's a crisis, there's
Absolutely.
torture, but also there's a complete fetish created because of the sleep crisis that we're having.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it's also, I mean, that's just capitalism, right? And we're going to talk about that with Ruhi, I'm sure, because I know she's worked on that kind of stuff. But I think another sleep awareness, and we should talk about that before our guest comes into the studio, is the torture that is motherhood, and
Oh,
how that completely messes with everything. And I know it's not fair, because I think there's lots of people who are not mothers or parents that still suffer from this. And I think we can still kind of blame capitalism at the end of the day, and hyperconnectivity, and this kind of drive to succeed and produce and all that kind of stuff. But the motherhood killed me. And I have to say, just as you say that there's a market, my first break in writing publicly came in the year 2011, where I wrote an article on parenting and sleep, because at the time
mm,
there were a lot of and it was my first public article. It went viral within half an hour. There were like 100 comments, and the whole article was sort of like a semi funny piece about the fact that my son just never slept, and that all these books about how to make your kids sleep are totally bogus, and they often fall into cultural stereotypes. Okay.
yes, yes.
Like, oh, French babies sleep this way, but actually it's the Asian moms that have it right. It's these moms, or it's just like, it was total nonsense. So it was also about like racism and stuff like that. And a majority of the comments that I got
Mm,
were, I specifically said, I don't have the answer. I'm sleep deprived. My son doesn't sleep. And it was kind of semi funny. And most of the comments were just about how can I get my baby to sleep? How can I get my baby to sleep? Then I started to get emails. How can I get, I'm like, I literally wrote an article. Like, I don't know. but,
I
yeah,
haven't
and
read
then I
this
became
article,
rich and
but
famous after that. I'm just kidding.
you
Go
have
on.
you have to send me this article. I
I
haven't read
will.
this by you.
Yeah.
Sounds fascinating. I did have a baby, a son who did not sleep for maybe 4 years. So I do remember those years very, very vividly, and some in a very foggy way. But you're right. Motherhood, sleep, parenting in general, and sleep. The gendered aspect of it is extremely important to talk about, right? When it
Yeah.
comes to women and sleep. But I also want to talk about children and sleep. I mean, you have a teen, and I have a teenage son.
Yeah.
Um, there's something going on with this whole notion of competition and school, and
Mhm.
getting to good college, insane amount of homework. At least I know my son, recently we have been talking about, he goes to bed at 2 a.m finishing up homework, and wakes up at 6 o'clock to make it
What?
to the school bus. I mean,
No,
that's
that's ridiculous.
insane. I tweeted about this, that I do not understand. I mean, I was not a great sleeper during my school or college years, but at least it was not like this. Do you
Yeah.
have something like this where you see kids?
I have an anxious teen, but he still listens to me. I don't know how that's going to change. So when I say you have to, you have to. But I can see that. But he was also naturally born sleeping badly, was what I said to myself. But then I thought I had imprinted certain anxious patterns of my own upon the child, because my daughter
Mhm.
was not like that when she was born. I was so caught up in so many other things that I didn't think nonstop. Is the kid sleeping? Is the kid breathing? So the second one slept okay. The first one took on, I feel, all my anxieties. And I feel that we have to also think about the sleep culture we were born into. Like,
Yeah.
the sleep culture in my home was pretty bad. I grew up in Bombay in an apartment, and my school began at 10 to 7. 6:50 was assembly and prayers, Catholic school. And my parents notoriously eat very, very late. Like, we had dinner at like 10. The TV was always blaring,
Mhm.
and I don't know when I slept, because I know I was never late to school. So I don't know if I just never valued it enough, and I have to learn to value it more. What was
Mhm.
your situation?
Well, I grew up, my initial years were in Calcutta, and it was slightly more slower. And then I moved to Delhi, which was different. It was early morning. But in
Mm,
Calcutta, I do remember I had this very nice coming back home from school, getting a nap, then waking up, going out to play, then getting homework. It was nicer. But then as times changed, it just became, the pace was suddenly completely different. It was
yeah.
lack
Mine was nice too, because I don't remember any of this as a traumatic memory, by the way. I don't
right,
remember thinking, my
right.
God, I need to sleep, but I have to go to school. I don't have that.
But
But
I do.
I know in retrospect something
Right. But
was off.
but you say that, it's funny because now I have conversations with my female friends. Now it's a kind of a cycle, which is really sad to say, that now that we're worried to sleep, that worry causes less sleep. Have you ever had that? That the
Yeah.
worry itself causes you not to sleep.
I had it last night, because we were going to have a sleep expert on. Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough situation, and I know there's now a discourse or whatever, a conversation taking place. I know there's a book out in the US called "Rest is Resistance."
Wow.
So it's like, if sleep is a political issue, so
Mm.
is getting sleep, getting good sleep, all of
Wow.
those kinds of
And who can
things.
get good sleep, right? And those host of conversations. But I'm also remembering, since you mentioned that, historians, I know of this friend and colleague, Arun Kumar, who works on sleep, and
Oh, okay.
laborers who worked in the night. But he also talks about, the 19th century caused a certain change from industrialism, and then the phases people would sleep and take a, wake up in the midnight and sleep again. And so he said he works on this kind of how sleep itself has changed since the 19th century till now, where less and less and less are happening. So I would be so interested to know more from our guest today, Ruhi
Yeah,
Snyder,
yeah,
how
and
he understands the sleep phases.
absolutely. And I think I see her now. So let's welcome her, and we'll get all our questions answered.
Absolutely.
Hi, Ruhi. Thank you so much for coming here. Welcome to the studio. Amrita and I have been sort of flailing with this issue on sleep, and we've basically been talking about just our personal experience. So we're excited to have a sleep expert, and I know you have years of experience working on this, and you have these complex case studies, and it's just such an honor to have you. And we just wanted to start with a very basic topic. The thing that we're discussing is, why are we so sleep deprived on this planet? But the first things first is, maybe you want to tell us, like, what is sleep? Why is it important? How much sleep do we really need? So let's get the basics out, and then we'll give you the hardball questions.
Oh, can't wait.
Welcome, Ruhi.
I thank you, Amrita and Bhakti. And Amrita, so nice to meet you. And I've been following you for a while and your adventures, scholarly and otherwise. And Bhakti, I am so grateful to you on so many levels. And that's a topic for another discussion.
Thank you.
um, from warscapes to the incredible work you're doing in regards of bringing stories to us from all over the world and connecting us to our humanity. And I'm deeply grateful for that. So yeah, sleep. It's one of my favorite subjects, something I just fell into, and it is it's an altered state of consciousness. So there's this conception that brain sleeps. When you're sleeping, brain sleeps. Actually, it doesn't. Brain is doing so much work. It's actually creating all kinds of wonderful things are happening when we go to sleep. Sleep is actually makes you who you are. That is a very different distinction from what you are. And that's something I talk about with young kids and young adolescents, that sleep is a way into who you become as a human being, not what. Don't confuse the two ever. Because this is where your consciousness gets realigned. This is where your memories form. This is where immune system regulates itself. This is where organs get their rest. This is where brain cleans itself of all the toxins that build up. And all these incredible things then lead us to hopefully become incredible human beings. So there's also this notation, like idea around how much sleep you need, which is a very controversial subject in many ways, but there is such beautiful science around that. And depending on your age, we know that young babies sleep for longer time, and adults, teenagers need anywhere from 9 to 10 hours, and adults, as we grow old or get to be adults, you need anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. Sleep is completely dependent on your needs. And that is completely dependent on this incredible thing that's happening in our brain, which is our central clock that regulates our daily rhythms of sleep and wakefulness. And each human being has their own. So if you're waking up refreshed and you're feeling good, your day goes well, you're golden. And if those things are interrupted due to many things,
so, but Ruhi, we've been talking about this, that waking up refreshed, which is hard to get these days. Bhakti and I have been talking about this.
Waking up tired. That's what we've been
waking up tired, or not really fully feeling well. But when do you think sleep started to become such an issue? Today, sleep is a political issue. It's a social justice issue. Also considered a human right in countries like US and India, where it has been officially acknowledged. So where do you think our relationship to sleep started going completely wrong?
That is such a complex question, and so interesting, because I think there is a difference between our personal relationship to sleep as well as the our society's idea around sleep. So I don't think our personal relationship to sleep went wrong. I think it's society's imposition on those very biologically essential aspects actually started going wrong. And I think it's been even before our ideas around capitalism. What one should be asking question: who gets good sleep, and how do you attain that good sleep?
Who does? Who gets
exactly? Who gets good sleep? Well, actually, I have to say that I'm getting pretty. Oh, I don't know. I mean, Elon Musk is claiming 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So the world, I think, is literally being run by sleep-deprived people. That has major consequences on decision-making and cognitive abilities. Like literally, less sleep you get, more negative emotions you are going to have. So who actually gets sleep? We should ask all those people that are just, that sleep under the banyan trees and they're just sleeping. And it's we should be asking those questions around that, because it's like all these other pressures that continue to add up that impinge then on our sleep and our health and well-being.
Yeah. But historically, do we know if sleep was better and that we are now in the worst kind of epidemic around this crisis?
I think we have a better understanding of
Yeah.
sleep. So there, who when you start thinking about who was writing about sleep in the Middle Ages, or the Western concept. I'm not looking at the Eastern concept, because we have divans in our living rooms in India. We have
Yeah.
divans, we have beds everywhere. Rest actually was a very big part of me growing up, because
Mm.
I'm a granddaughter of gentle human farmers. They had, there were beds everywhere. So the person who would come into the house as a guest arriving would be asked if they wanted to lie down after a glass of water before they have a cup of tea, because
Mhm.
rest was imbued in that. It was a fabric of where I was growing up. And it's very different from the ideas around the West, which
Yeah.
considers idea of rest, equates it with laziness.
Mm.
I think is a very Protestant-ish thing. Like, we don't talk about those things, and those are the subjects that really require addressing. So
Mm.
if you look at Middle Ages, you have who's writing about sleep and who's writing about all the monks. Monks
Mm.
were basically, they had the scholarly, they carried the scholarly aspects of that society, and they
Mm.
would wake up part way, write their thoughts, and go back to sleep. Meanwhile, the peasants were working, they would be waking up middle of the night because either the fire went out or there were rats. So this concept of the modern sleep is
Mm.
actually really a wonderful one. The more we got um, sheltered in way, protected from the outside environments, the better the sleep. Right. So once we started removing all those other things that were intrusive to
Mm.
thinking about whether we are vulnerable or not, then
Mm.
sleep got better and better. So I think these are going to be ongoing conversations. But yeah, there's a very beautiful scientific literature around ideas around consolidated sleep,
Mhm.
because as human beings, we evolved around the dark and the light
Right.
cycles, right? So darkness was where you needed to rest and you needed to sleep, and more consolidated the sleep, the better the outcome
Mm.
as survival for our species.
Beautiful.
Ruhi, I found that fascinating. You talked about divans in the living rooms and wherever in the private spaces of our homes. And I'm thinking, I was born in Calcutta, and afternoon sleep was a thing. I don't know, Bhakti must
Yeah,
be there, in your
absolutely.
context also. And, you also talked about shifts of sleep, and in the last 10 years your work has been on shift work, and you also argue that there is this kind of slow violence that is caused by shift work. Can you unpack for us what it means? What do we mean by shift work, and how is it related to a slow violence?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that question. So I've been in sleep medicine for 2 decades, which means I study sleep at night. So I am literally studying sleeps of other people while accumulating my own sleep disorders. Interesting, right? Like that's what ended up happening. You're just like you're studying and you're figuring out other people's issues, and then you suddenly a decade later go, whoa, 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 what is happening with me? Like something is really off with so many systems. Um, so shift work. So idea of shift work, if you look at definitions, is anything that is outside what I called normal Henry Ford hours, right? Henry Ford, 8 to 5, or 8 to 4, 9 to 5 hours are Henry Ford hours. Anything outside of that would be considered, shift work. But that's not actually its definition. The more you go deep into the scientific literature as you unpack it, you realize that it's actually outside the norms of our own circadian clock.
Mhm.
So if you are, and we are, if there are people who are more morning people, they wake up and they're just like everything goes, things make sense, they are at it. Evening comes and they're just like, I'm ready, I'm ready for bed. That's what I want to do. And then you have people like me, or used to be like me, who were like evening type people. I became activated in the evening and everything was clear. Like nights were very much my thing. I I could do everything at night. Things made clear, the world quietened down. So, and most people exist in between those spaces. So anybody who is, I consider shift work for anyone who's outside of their norms of their own circadian clock. So if you're a morning person and you have to work evenings, then you're outside. That would be considered. And if you're an evening person and you have to work mornings, that's outside of your circadian clock. That is how I define shift work. And I call it, the reason I called my entire thesis the slow violence is a term that I borrowed from Rob Nixon, and I need to cite and acknowledge every person because it's really important. And also in conversation with my amazing friend, Dr. Sarah Kostner, because when I started doing the study itself, and then I had to actually do a presentation on it, I was like, I don't want to say mitigate the negative side of it, because it's not negative. It's something more sinister. There's something deeper about it. So I called it the slow violence because it is invisible. And Rob Nixon defines it as invisible environmental catastrophes, and its impact, its invisible impact on human beings. And he was particularly referring, Bhakti and Amrita, to the carbide bomb.
Yeah, I know that book. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, right. And so, and environmentalism of the poor. So for me, that made perfect sense, because what was happening wasn't at an artificial level. It wasn't like a fast punch that it hit you and you're just like, oh, I feel it. It was happening at a molecular level, unseen. And by the time most people realize as to what it is, it's already late for quite a few people. It's an ongoing, it's not like this is something new or this has been going on for a long time. And, we replicate studies and we replicate more and we replicate more. And praxis is not taken into account. So my whole idea has always been around, how do you take the scientific analysis, but how do you form it into the realities of other human beings? Like, how do you interpret that? How do you form praxis?
Amazing. That's amazing. Wonderful. Can I go back to our East-West conversation? I know that it's frowned upon to talk in those terms, but your India feels different from, like, I think I feel like I did not grow up with napping, as napping was frowned on. I mean, my school started very early, Catholic school, and
there you have it.
Everyone I knew came home by 1:15 and then took naps and then did whatever. But somehow in my home, and I think the answer might be that my dad was in a British boarding school, and maybe that's like how the culture altered around that. But the thing that I have observed now that my friends have kids and things like that is, like, there is some sort of disrespect towards sleep that is intense. Like, when I had kids, I was very intense, like, oh, they have to sleep and they must sleep early and sleep begets sleep and all those things I was reading up. And I just find, like, kids in India going to, like, I go to a mall in Bombay or something for a movie, and it's 11:30 and there's kids and it's just like a mela, and it's fun and all that. But, like, it's a weeknight and they have school in the morning, usually super early. There is some, I don't know. I don't know I don't know if there's a question in there, but it just feels like that East-West stuff has merged, whatever that Protestant work ethic thing you're talking about versus a sort of hyper-capitalist middle class India, urban India, like something there has also merged. So I don't know how much those theories remain to a degree, but I feel like there must be something left to recuperate from a previous time, right? I don't know. What do you think?
So that's very interesting. So you have to look at times. I grew up in the 70s. Right? I was born in the 70s. Very different India. Incredibly different India. You have, we're just forming ourselves, literally. We're just coming out of our post-colonial Raj era and forming these and we had like beginning. I mean, I'm not going to go into the politics of India right now. That's also another subject. But when we were forming our ideas of who we are as a nation, it was quite extraordinary, right? And we didn't, in the 70s, India was very much trying to figure itself out and not interested in Western ideas of what India needs to be.
Right.
So it was actually a beautiful time because we had only two stations, like, the Doordarshan and the Pakistan, like the best dramas were from Pakistan,
Yeah.
right? And we were right up, and I grew up in Amritsar, right at the border of India, of Lahore, and and it was, and the time, and this was also, Bhakti, the time where you slept outside.
Right.
Everybody had their beds outside, and you slept literally under the Milky Way. So very different times from where we are present right now.
Sure.
Right? And so therefore that, my idea around educating adolescents and young people is emerging from that space too, to realize how I grew up and what sleep constituted and what it meant. And but that's a retrospective analysis. Like, that's not what I was thinking growing up, because you went to bed because there were no devices. You are not on things. You did your things and you went to bed, and then you woke up, and all of those things, imaginary plays and communities and neighborhoods, and not all. I'm not saying it's all peaches and cream.
No, of course.
But
No.
there's as a child, there is beauty to it.
Yeah.
We reflect back on that.
Absolutely. There's a total shift in our conception of time, of course. And I know, Amrita, you were going to capitalism thing. Go ahead.
No, but I wanted to say, because Bhakti, you mentioned, there's this mall culture now and late nights, but it also brings up what, Ruhi, you mentioned more devices around us, constant hyper connectivity. I don't know how many of us wake up in the night and look at the phone.
All of us.
Don't look at your phone. Don't look at your phone.
Not really.
It's the worst thing to do.
It's the worst thing you can do.
But with this hyper connectivity, hyper everything, hyper productivity, intense work pressure, you're talking about work hours longer, and less of this really communal connections that we used to have. You're talking about sleeping under the skies, so beautifully put. But so it seems to me that we are saying that capitalism is to blame. But is that the only factor? Are there other factors? Or ignored reasons that you have in your study and research discovered during the course of the last 10 years or so?
Not trying to give capitalism a pass.
No.
Always the villain.
No. Capitalism should never get a pass. And I think we've moved actually beyond capitalism. We are in a post, my friend Jeremy.
Post-late, I don't know.
Post neoliberal. That's where we are at, right? Like, we've moved on to a whole different era and I think there's a podcast I've recorded. I've not had time because I was saying I'm involved in something very complex right now that requires all of my intellectual and abilities and time and all of that. I've been focused on that for the past 2 years. But sleep actually plays a major role in what I'm doing at the moment as well. And so when you I think the post-neoliberal idea is you extract, time, space, bodies, ideas. Like, you just are constantly extracting. And it's like, as you said, like in ideas around, careerism is the worst thing that's ever been. And it's not just hyper-productivity, it's hyper-competitiveness. And that is insane, because what it does is it completely puts us in silos, where the idea of wanting to have total collaborations to redefine how we want to live in a society and how we want to redefine the world, not just for my child, but our collective children. is
Mm.
actually just it's in the wayside, because we just are so focused on that next rung in the ladder to whatever office or whatever title people want,
Mm.
and we step on everything that is human.
Yeah.
It's a I believe it's dehumanizing. So
True.
the more we deprive ourselves and more we deprive our children biologically essential aspects, is it's incredibly important that we focus on that, that our world builds around that idea. It's not just to we blame on capitalism or
Yeah.
neoliberalism. It's um, it's all of us that are also contributing to it.
Mm.
Sure. Sure, 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 absolutely. And it's interesting you're talking about children, because Amrita and I were speaking about this before you joined us. And, I don't know which way to swing. I know that children these days get the least sleep. I mean, I don't know if you followed, I think it was a case in Indonesia where the government changed the timings to 5:30 a.m. for teenagers. And I know teenagers have to sleep late, or their rhythm changes. And they kind of tried to bring a case against the state for having changed the timings in the school, because there were all these pictures emerging of these kids walking to school like the sun hasn't even
Mhm.
risen yet, and so on. But like, on a personal level, it's like motherhood took my sleep, you
That's
know. I mean, of course I am very concerned about my child's sleep, but it's like, what the hell, like, it just completely, that's the first time I became aware. It is now that I'm thinking, did I sleep well as a child and all? I don't know, because I have no memory. I don't remember that being a huge issue at all. But it became an issue as soon as the newborn came into my life. And for a while, my partner also chose to stay up, but then it wasn't workable. It's like, why are we all running around being sleep deprived? That's not love, that's absurd. So
Love.
so
and we
I
have
mean,
never slept since.
somebody has to function. It's like, but like, I'm thinking, like, can you comment a little on gender and sleep? I feel like, is sleep a particular issue for women? Can we blame the patriarchy now that we're done with capitalism?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, patriarchy is the center of all insanity. Oh, 100%. I mean, Bhakti, you have these conversations all the time, right, openly in public as well, as do I. And the whole Indonesian thing, I think I did a whole tweet on it stating how
Mm,
it's a violation of human rights. It's a not only it's torture to
yeah.
do that to children whose circadian clocks are actually, and that's definitely a different conversation. We should definitely do that and gear it towards teens, is
Mhm.
how their clocks actually shift. When you're teenagers, circadian clock literally shifts. So you are pushing them against their very nature, like of what is supposed to be happening, pushing against it. It
Yes.
was the same thing when they were like, um, where reading needs to happen in kids. And then you realized, wait, the brains itself form differently in male and female. That you realize that male, it took longer for to read. Women were able to, girls were, or young females were able to read way before the
Mm,
age than males, and or yeah. So it's the same thing in regards to sleep and gender. And definitely, motherhood has a massive impact on just not just our sleep. It's an aspect that we are deprived of, because we, as in terms of like reproductive abilities and the follow up post reproductive, is basically women.
Mm.
Right?
yeah.
You can have amazing partners. That's not saying that
Sure.
we don't, and I'm not saying that we don't have amazing partners. I actually do. But
Mhm.
most of the work is on women. You are breastfeeding at night. You are, you know, breastfeeding alone, and
Yeah.
your brain literally, as you become a mother, changes. It totally shifts. It's rewiring itself. Like,
Mhm.
it's, how our body responds to our children. There is like this there's this incredible relationship between a mother and a child that a father does not have. And that is so, and our sleep becomes very shallow in that way because we need to be able to hear.
Exactly. It's anxiety ridden, even if the kid is sleeping.
Yeah, and it's anxiety ridden for the rest of our lives as mothers,
Exactly.
because I talked about this. I had a great conversation, and it's ongoing on motherhood and brain. That it's ongoing. It's 24/7.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it totally shifts our sleep, and in some cases we never recover from that.
Oh God.
Yeah, and the motherly duties. Imagine like being a shift worker who's a single mother. Like,
Oh.
you can go to the worst case scenario possible, which is where I go to. I go, okay, well, you got to start. If you want to change a system, you got to start with the least, like the lowest denominator ever, and build up.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking care of that, then there is going to be no change or effect in a society, in a system.
Right.
So you look at single mothers, which I know and I've worked with, and I have deep love and respect and admiration for the things they have to do.
Yeah.
And throughout, and how their sleep is compromised because they have to come home from their late night, and we're not even talking about, I'm not going to go into the science of it. They're already compromised. They have to then come from their late shift work, look after their kids, take them to school, and then wake up before they have to pick them up, and then do everything to get ready for the next shift.
Oh.
It's dehumanizing. There is no humanity in it.
Yeah.
We have built an entire society, structure, systems that is not human. Non-human model.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting, Ruhi. You're talking about the gendered aspect of sleep, but it also struck me when you were talking about teens. And if you can follow up on this, you said teens literally have a shift in circadian rhythm. Can you explain what that means in terms of sleep?
Yeah. So
Selfish questions. We both have teens.
no,
I'm almost worried now.
no, don't be worried. That's we will empower them. We don't need to worry about them. That's why we're having these conversations. So we will make sure that they are fully empowered in their health and well-being. So what happens as teenagers, there are the circadian clock itself gets delayed. So there is a hormone called melatonin that activates sleep mechanisms. And so melatonin itself is delayed as you enter adolescence. And when we wake up, sleep is literally building up. It starts to build up the moment you wake up. And that process is actually slowed down as well in teenagers. So not only the circadian clock itself is delayed, the drive to sleep itself is delayed. So it shifts. So that's why teens like being up at night and waking up late at night, because that's their biology. That's what happens. And you can curtail it to a certain point for sure. But tell me a teenager, like there are very few, and this is field work I've done for a decade as well in classrooms, where I've asked them what is going on. And on top of that, the hyper competitiveness that they have to do. Like now they have to have binders full of things before they can even, I know where I want to that
Binders.
binders full of things that they have to present in order to get to any place, and then societal pressure.
Sure. Yeah, pressure they're putting on themselves, which is the sad part. Like, I can't help anymore, nor can Amrita help her son anymore with like, don't do this, or they want that, they are feeling it, they've taken it on. And I know several states in the US changed their school start times because of a study on teen sleep. But we are going to be out of time, so I wanted you to leave us with like a real wisdom for all of us to move forward and try to fix the sleep deprivation epidemic. personally or collectively?
Okay, so I'm going to just talk from my very personal experience here,
Okay.
because that's all I can do. I'm not the one going, you must get, no, I know why you're not getting, like, we all know that. And we are more aware of ourselves and our bodies. So build your systems around your sleep. So I am very protective of my sleep. I really am, because there are a lot of pressures and there are a lot of things. And I know that if I don't get that everything else about me is going to be compromised. And I know that for a fact because I did a decade-long study on it. So it's really important to please not look at your phones. Just start slow. Don't like create a whole list around everything and just say, I have to do this. Just start with a singular thing. So if you're waking up middle of the night and checking your phone, kindly put your phone out of the bedroom. I mean it. Like, take it out. Put it out unless you really, really need it for emergency purpose. Don't look at it. It's going to compromise more than just your sleep. Absolutely. It's going to have deleterious effects on the rest of your system. And very, very kind to yourself at least an hour before going to bed. Just do that. Just do that. Turn your lights down in your house. And I don't know if you...
What about TV? I need to watch TV before I sleep.
Bhakti, you and I need to have
my most relaxed hour.
TV. Yeah, you might think that, but it is going to have an impact, overall impact on the quality of your sleep. So that's something we can definitely talk about. Definitely. Anytime, anyone, like, just let's talk about it more and more. Yeah, and just do that. Do those things. Those are two things that you can start with. Get away from blue light. It'll activate systems in your brain, because your brain cannot distinguish between daylight or the blue light. It automatically thinks, oh my God, time to wake up, and sends all these signals. The circadian clock is like, whoa, what is happening here? This is not, we need to sleep. So it just start with those little things and connect on these topics more and more and more, so we can start building better systems somewhere.
Thank you so much. This is
thank
wonderful.
you.
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate this. Thank you for having me. I can honestly say I love everything about this.
Thank you once again.
Absolutely.
We'll be back on The Wire next week with another question, another exciting guest, and more conversation.